Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Rag Plays Crusader Kings II. What the hell is this expansion called? Monks and Mystics on the Penitenziagite campaign. Derp-a-derp-a-derp. I don't know what this is called. I've only been doing this for 5 or 6 episodes. Last time we finished off the Council tab. You know all that you need to know about this tab, I think. I've covered everything. We're moving on to laws. This is a very confusing section. So, within the tab, we are going to look at the county laws of Montferrat and the Holy Roman Empire. Because we are part of both of these things. Our county, as you remember, switch to direct vassals. Map mode is the county of Montferrat here. And this is the laws that make up the county of Montferrat and are enforceable in it. First tab is inheritance. Now inheritance governs who takes over this kingdom, this county, when we die. So right now our inheritance law is agnatic cognatic gavelkind. What does that mean? That is a mouthful of words that you've probably never seen before if you haven't played this game. Agnatic cognatic. We'll start with these two words. What agnatic cognatic means is that upon the death of the ruler, whoever happens to be ruling, it is preferred that a male takes over a female. So if I have an older daughter, let's say I have a hypothetical daughter and she is older than my firstborn son, even though she's older, she will not inherit my kingdom. My son will inherit my kingdom because he is the oldest son. But being as we're agnatic cognatic and not purely agnatic, because agnatic means male, essentially, that means that if we don't have any sons and we have daughters, our county will still remain in our family, and it will still be under the control of my family. It will go to my daughter. You want to have agnatic cognatic succession law because it gives you a higher chance of not losing the game. You lose the game when you lose control of your territory. If you run out of family members and there's no one left to inherit your county, that's it. It's game over. You lose. So you always want to have as many as you can. To get as many as you can, you want agnatic cognatic. It's good to have that. The other two options for gender laws, because these are the gender laws here, agnatic, which is purely male, only males can inherit. That's sometimes beneficial. Absolute cognatic. Women inherit on the same grounds men do. So if I wanted to switch to absolute cognatic, I could actually, that would change it so if I had a hypothetical older daughter, the older daughter would inherit over the older son. That would be beneficial too, really. Sometimes women are good, but women tend to not be as liked in the game as men are, because in the Middle Ages it was a male-dominated society. The ranks of government were all men, and they generally would not look in favor upon women in ruling positions. It's just the way it was. They weren't as respected at this period in time. Anyway. Back to laws. So that takes care of the gender laws. That's agnatic cognatic. Now what does gavelkind mean? Gavelkind is the actual succession law. This is what happens when we die. So we know that our son is going to be inheriting first, our firstborn son, because it's agnatic cognatic. Now, the succession laws, what governs who inherits, let's say we have multiple sons, that's what succession law has to do with here. So right now we are on agnatic cognatic gavelkind. Now what this means, what gavelkind means specifically, let's say we owned Saluzzo, Montferrat, and Piedmont, but we did not own the Duchy of Susa. Right? We just owned these three, but we weren't the Duke yet. We didn't have the money to create the Duchy or whatever else. We don't have access to the Duchy. We're still just the Count of Monferrat as our primary title. Upon our death, what would happen would be, because our son has a son, he has bypassed our second son, so they always favor the line. It's like the line of kings. The firstborn son is favored, so he will inherit Montferrat. But if I had more than one county and I was on gavelkind, what that means is that this would be split between my son my grandson, my other son, and my nephew, potentially. These 4 people would all gain counties, so if I had Savoy on top of this, 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 and this, and Savoy as well, my realm would be split into 4 pieces, and I would only be left in control of this, because I would become the primary son. My other sons would go independent because I'm just a count. Now, if, however, I'm on Gavelkind and I have made the duchy somehow, that means I would get to keep the duchy title, but I would still lose this land. I would no longer have this in my domain personally. My sons, my other sons, rather they would be my brothers, since I would take over as my firstborn. My brothers and my son would gain this, 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 but they would all still be underneath me because I am the Duke and they owe me fealty. So they would owe me allegiance, they would fight for me, but I wouldn't own their land. They would give me less troops because of it. Gavelkind is a bad succession law. It's very situational. What it does do that's good is that it increases your domain size. You can hold more land, but due to the temporary nature of how long you get to hold it and how it usually fractures upon your death, it's kind of not a good law. It's not one you want to stay on for very long unless you have a way of managing it so you only ever have one son. And then Gavelkind can be really good because no matter what, the son will always inherit everything. Now, other succession laws that we could potentially switch to. Elective Gavelkind. What this means is that we would get to choose the primary heir to get the best title. So if we had the duchy title, or say Montferrat, and we owned Piedmont and Saluzzo as well, we'd get to choose who would get Montferrat if Montferrat was our best county. So we could elect our firstborn, or we could elect our secondborn, and he would become the primary inheritant. But still, it would still split the rest of our land, whatever we didn't choose, between our other male relatives. So, it's still another one that's situational. It's better than regular Gavelkind, but it's not much better than regular Gavelkind. Next one up is seniority. What this means is, if we were agnatic cognatic seniority, that would mean that the oldest family member of our dynasty, the Allaramicis, so the oldest family member would probably be, if we died, would probably be our half-brother here, Burgundo Allamarici. He would inherit everything. And he would get everything because it was seniority. Seniority is alright as a succession law. It's kind of sucks because you're going to be plagued with short reign penalties a lot because you'll have rulers that die within very short lifespans of each other, because you'll probably have multiple brothers, and if you're really old, if you live to a ripe old age, you'll go through like 5 successions in a row, because you'll die, then your second youngest brother will die, then your third youngest brother will die, and he'll die until it kind of sorts itself out. It can be a little bit messy. Next one down, primogeniture. What does primogeniture mean? That means that your oldest firstborn son, your oldest son, that's the easiest way to put it, will inherit, or your oldest child inherits everything. This is a good way to keep everything intact in your realm. Generally, your vassals don't like this law because it means that it's like the penultimate nepotism. It'll never pass outside your dynasty. There's no chance of anyone else taking control of what's going on in your realm if you have this. So it's good for you, it's bad for everybody else. They'll disapprove. It's not that big of a deal. This is a very good succession law because it usually ensures that your firstborn's usually your best son. He's the one you put the most time into, or daughter if you happen to be on absolute cognatic. Whatever it happens to be, your firstborn tends to be the best choice. He might not turn out as the best always, but generally he's probably one of the better ones that you focused on. Next one down, Elective Monarchy. This is my favorite one. This is what the HRE uses. And this works like Elective Gavelkind, except Elective Monarchy means that everything goes to one character, but you get to choose who that character is. How the choice is calculated is that if I was a duke, all of my counts underneath me, if I had any counts, let's say if I was the duke and I owned Montferrat, Piedmont, and Saluzzo, I owned all 3 of these in my county, I would get one vote, and that would be the only vote that matters. So I would basically say, okay, you know what, my firstborn son, he's not so good. I'm going to elect my secondborn son. My secondborn son would become the Duke of Montferrat, or the Duke of Susa here. It becomes messy. The only time it becomes messy is when, let's say I was the Duke of Susa, but I didn't own Piedmont or Saluzzo. These were both counts underneath me, who owed me allegiance. They would also get votes. Now, they could vote for themselves to become the Duke of Montferrat. That would be bad because we'd lose control. We'd get to keep our county, our one county that we own. There'd be no way they could take it from us by doing that, but they would take the primary title, and they would have control over what direction the realm would go in, and how they'd administer it, and what, you know, when to declare war and when not to. And we would be subservient to them, and they would be subservient to the HRE, which would be bad. We would want to keep it within our family and influence the vote in elective monarchy. And there are numerous ways we can do that. Generally, you want to make people very happy with you. You want to have a high prestige. The electors, whoever qualifies to elect a person in your realm, say if I had those two counts, let's say I had higher prestige than either of those two counts, well, one of those two counts would likely vote for me, which would mean that the vote would pass 2-3 in my favor, or 2-1 in my favor, and the other count would vote for himself or whatever. Then I would get to maintain the kingdom. The best way that you do this with elective monarchy, it's good for a big realm. It's very good for small realms. It's good for a person who has a lot of centralization and good characters. I like elective monarchy. It's very flexible. It's very good. It makes sure you have the best person fit for the job usually. And even if you lose control of the kingdom, it's not the end of the world, because you'll still get to maintain your domain. If you were the Duke of something and you had like five provinces, you'd still get to keep all that. It wouldn't be so bad, because you could potentially next election you could win. So it'd be a good thing to have. It would kind of suck though. Ultimogeniture, it's the opposite of primogeniture. It's where your youngest inherits. I don't know why you would ever want to change it to this. It would be situational if you absolutely had to change the law and you're like, oh my god, I'm on primogeniture and my firstborn son just sucks ass, then you would switch to ultimogeniture and maybe change it back the next time you change rulers. That's basically all that means. So you have the gender preference, and then you have the inheritance laws. But obviously ultimogeniture works the same way as primos, that you get to keep all the titles and you continue with the realm and whatnot. But it's bad to become a younger character in general, unless he's an adult. Like let's say I died, let's say I had another son here who was 0 years old. If I was under ultimogeniture, that means that the 0-year-old would take over ruling this country. Now why that's bad? Why is that bad? Because people don't respect a baby. They'll be more likely to join factions, they'll be more likely to try and put themselves on the seat, especially if he has 2 older brothers, and especially if they own land. Like if I owned Montferrat and they were counts underneath me, my 2 brothers were underneath me and I inherited Montferrat, it's likely that one of those 2 would try and declare war on me and take the duchy away and take my county away even, and that would be game over, I think. I don't know, I don't think that's ever happened to me before, but we might become our brother, or it might be game over. It would depend, I think. So, that is the inheritance laws for our realm in Montferrat. If we switch to the Holy Roman Emperor, you can see what the Holy Roman Empire, though, on the Empire level, you can see that their laws are agnatic elective. That means only men can ever be elected, and they are on elective monarchy right now, so they get to choose. The next Kaiser, as we can see here, you can see by the votes that they're all voting in a certain way. There's a few candidates, but the front runner is Duke Ernst of Austria, who lives here. If I had to suspect, that's because he has a high diplomacy skill, and yeah, he's influencing a lot of people to vote for him. He's a very likable fellow, and he's not even very strong, funnily enough, but he will be the next emperor when Kaiser Heinrich dies. His dynasty is von Babenberg, and You can see his family there. So this will switch. If we switch over to Dynasty map mode, Salian will switch to von Babenberg on the next election, if it remains in his favor. The HRE, if all stays the same, it'll go to him. All right, let us switch back to our Montferrat so that we can see our own county, and we will go to realm laws. This is the civic and religious laws of the realm, and what this means is it tells us when we can revoke titles. So we are currently not allowed to revoke titles under any circumstances. If we became the Duke, and let's say one of our vassals became rebellious and we threw him in prison because he was doing something. Let's say he rose up in rebellion against us, and we won the rebellion, we beat him, we threw him in prison, we wouldn't have the option to take his title from him as punishment, and that sucks. Ideally, we want to change over to be allowed to revoke titles. That's probably going to be one of the first laws we change when I actually begin playing the game, is switch it over to allowed and see who supports it. Actually, most of the realm supports it right now. It'd be a perfect time to pass that law, so that we're able to revoke something if we have a rebellion on our hands. After that, there's another one up, and we need a higher rank in legalism to be able to do this. Legalism is a technology. Technology unlocks more laws, certain laws for you. That's religious revocation. What that would mean is that I would be able to freely revoke anyone's territory who was underneath me. Any vassal who suddenly became a heretic, for instance, I could instantly take their land from them. No questions asked. No reason needed. You're a different religion. Give me your shit. It's mine now. You can't have it. And that would be the same as if I had any just straight up pagans underneath me, or people from completely different religions. Anything like that, I could just take their title. Administration. This basically this allows us to unlock different inheritance laws, I believe. By switching from feudal administration, which is what we're on now, to late feudal administration, it would allow us to access more inheritance laws and things like that. We'd be able to switch to primogeniture, and some of those would unlock for us. Late feudal lords realized the importance of keeping inheritance together to facilitate their dynasty's long-term increase in power and wealth. In this system, there is a tendency for vassals to grow more and more powerful with time, if not kept in check. So people become stronger and stronger, and it's harder and harder to keep your vassals in check. But in trade for that, it allows additional succession laws. Vassals who refuse liege interference in wars are seen as traitors. So if they don't listen to what I say, if I call a stop to my war, if I tell them to do something, if I demand that they go to war with me and they don't answer the call, then they're traitors and I can take their stuff. That's the benefit of that. But feudal, what we're on now, feudal society is a hierarchy of landed lords where each person in the system owes fealty to those directly above and commands those directly below. It is the way that most of the medieval world works, and it means that the ruler depends greatly on the loyalty of his more powerful vassals. So this is sort of the consent of the governed sort of thing. I rule because other people put their faith in me that I'm going to protect them and so forth. And they are ruled because they know I will protect them. You see, and I rule and so forth. And, I don't even know how to explain this. It's the relationship. They pay me tax, so I protect them. I protect them because they pay me tax. Late feudal is the idea of countries starting to come out that, no, you owe me because the divine right of kings. I am king under God. I deserve this, and you don't have any authority to say that you refuse my commands because I was given this crown by God, essentially. Next up, so that's civic and that's realm law. Civic and religious law is taken care of. Obligations. This is basically taxation. I tend to never bother fucking with this because it tends to be more trouble than it's worth. It used to be a lot different than this, and this you have higher levels of balance between each of these things. Let's say right now we're on balanced law, which means that the nobles, see it says nobles, burghers, churches, and tribal. If we had tribal vassals, you remember if I switch to government types here, find the government tab right there. Some places in the world are still tribal. If I had any tribal vassals, this would govern how many men they choose to give me and how much tax they pay. So, switch over to the direct vassals tab. Since we have noble vassals, we have burgher vassals and church vassals. Since we are in the middle of Europe and we're not going to have any tribal vassals, it's way too far away for us to ever have that. For nobles, right now it's balanced, but we could shift it so the nobles are more obligated to give us troops instead of pay us money. They get to pay us less taxes, but in turn they're obligated to give us more troops. That might be useful in the future. Conversely, we could have it so that they're, you know, as long as you pay me more tax, you don't have to go to war with me. I'll handle the wars, you give me money. Same goes for burghers, and same goes for the church. In general, the way to min-max this, the easiest way, the way to min-max it hardcore, though, would be for, if you wanted to do this properly, the churches have the highest potential, I believe, to give you the most taxes, but the problem with that, if you wanted to shift your churches over to paying you more tax directly, you have to keep the churches happy, or else all that tax, all these tax laws that you put into place don't matter, because they're going to be paying all those taxes to Rome. That won't serve you any benefit. If you can keep them happy, it would be excellent to get them on the highest tax focus, because they'd be paying you a butt-ton of money. If you can't do that, if you don't feel like bothering with it, if you want to put things on autopilot, make it easy for yourself, switch the churches over to levy. Have them be forced to give you more levy instead of money, because it is so hard to get the churches happy to where they're consistently paying you. You might as well just cut that out of the equation, just have them shift over more towards the levy, so they don't pay you much of anything, but they're required to give you troops, and they're always required to give you troops. They don't have to give the Pope troops or anything like that, so no matter what, they'll be giving you men. On the other hand, burghers, if you want to autopilot the burghers, you want to shift them towards taxes instead of men, because the burghers are less likely to give you troops than they are to give you money. And towns make a lot of money. They're the biggest source of income in the game, are towns. A lot of our taxes come from towns right now. I can't remember where to see that exactly. It'd probably be on this. Yeah, you see, our city tax right now is 7.38%. 7.38. That is a good chunk of our income. That's almost half of our income, or a third at least. So, if you shift it towards tax shifted, they'll give you less troops, which doesn't really matter because they barely give you any troops to begin with, but they'll give you more tax. You probably want to shift them towards men if you wanted to min-max them, because you can see that the bonuses here, they would give you 35% extra tax, but they would give you minimum of 40% extra men if you switched it. So the amount that you get is better here. The percentile is better, but it requires more micromanagement. And if you look at the church, it's the similar thing. The benefit is better if you try and tax them, but the amount of micromanaging you have to do to get them to like you better than the Pope is not worth the trouble. So switch the churches to levy, switch the burghers to tax, and you'll have a good system going. Nobles, I like to keep them dead on in the center usually. I don't like having them give me more than one or the other. But you might have... It might be good to give troops, it might be situationally good to increase this every so often, but you really have to make a decision what direction you're going to go in, because once you go down this road, I don't think you can choose. You have to kind of do it incrementally. You have to go, okay, I'm going to do this much, then this much, then this much, and that takes a lot of years to change back and forth. So don't worry about obligations, though, in general. I'd say just, when you're first starting out in the game, you don't need to know this. It's just a good idea to know kind of what it does. Council law, this is the last important part of the law. So you remember the council back here. our council specifically, they all have the ability to vote on everything in our realm, potentially. When we look at council law, the council right now is currently empowered. That means that they get a say in how the country is governed, and we can choose to listen to them or we can choose to ignore them, but they do have a say, and if we ignore them, they become angry, since they're empowered. Right now, war declarations, whenever we decide to go to war, the entire council has to approve of that war. So it's in favor of the council right now. As you can see, I can't just say, because it's in the favor of ruler, if I had this switch to ruler, I wouldn't need to ask the council permission to go to war. I can go to war anytime I like. I don't need to care about their opinions. But since it's in the council's opinion whether we want to go to war or not, they have to approve of it. I can still go to war without their approval, but it will be viewed as tyrannical, and people will hate me because of it. The entire realm will hate me, not just the people who I'm going up against, but they'll hate me, my vassals will hate me, and so forth, and that'll decay over time. But tyranny, generally speaking, you want to stay away from it. It just causes a lot of problems. Right now, revoking titles, it's in favor of the ruler, so I'm allowed to revoke titles, but as you can see, I'm not allowed to revoke titles at all. So even though it says that if I were allowed to revoke titles, it would be completely in favor of me, I wouldn't need to ask the council permission. I actually can't revoke any titles because reasons. Because it's disabled elsewhere. I don't know why those are two separate things, but it is so. Granting titles, strictly in the ruler's favor. That's a great one to have. You want to get these. Ideally, you want every law to be in the ruler's favor eventually. We're going to be working our way towards that. So, ruler, currently I can grant titles. So if I happen to create the Duchy of Susa and I want to get rid of, say, I own Saluzzo and Piedmont, I'd have the ability to create a new count there and give a county away, is what it's saying. If I'm over my domain limit, if I'm 6 out of 5, I need to get rid of something. Ideally, you probably want to get rid of the thing that is worth least to you. And then you turn that person into a count, he will become a vassal, he'll pay you tax, and you protect him, and so forth. And that gives me the ability to actually do that. And you want that in favor of the ruler, because if you do a war and you don't have this law enabled, and it's the council who's in charge of giving out titles, they decide who gets them. I wouldn't be able to give it to my family. Like, if I wanted to give away a province, ideally you want to give it to somebody who's in your dynasty. So you have a fallback point. You'll have someone who always supports you. You'll have a loyalist on your side because you gave them land and they're your family. They're invested in protecting you. Execution, it's in favor of the ruler right now, so anyone who's deemed as a traitor, anyone at all in my prison potentially, I have the ability to just execute without any say from the council. I say they're a criminal, they are dead. However, I could still potentially get tyranny if I execute the wrong person. If I execute someone unlawfully, you have to be careful with that. But before, it would still require council approval on all cases, and that would suck. Banishment, currently in favor of the ruler. If somebody's done something unlawful and they're in prison, I have the option to banish them from my realm as one of their punishments. That means I seize all their funds, I take everything that they own, and they leave my realm. If they own land, it would pass from them to their children, and their children would still get to keep the land. I wouldn't get the title out of it, but I would remove the problem. Basically, I'd remove the kid's father if the father rose up against me, and then I could get rid of him. So, in favor of the ruler means I can do that at any time I want. I don't need approval of the council to do it. I don't need their vote. Imprisonment, currently, it's in favor of the council. That's bad. It means that every time I want to imprison somebody, even if it's righteous imprisonment, the council has to vote yes or no on it. Usually they'll vote yes. Ideally, I still want to switch it away from the council and in the ruler's favor. I want absolute power in my realm. Everyone should want absolute power in their own realm. We want to be able to do anything without the AI having any say in it, because the AI tends to make stupid decisions, and they don't think in the long term. AI is not capable of thinking. It's only programmed towards reactions, as you'll know. War declaration, currently in the council's favor. I can't declare war unless the council is in favor of declaring war, or if I can still declare war, but it'll encourage tyranny. It's the same deal with the... And the last law, once I switch imprisonment into ruler's favor, and once I switch war declaration to ruler's favor, this will become unlocked here. Council power, and I'll be able to abolish the council for good. They'll not be able to vote. They'll not be able to vote on anything, which would be fantastic. I'd like to get rid of them. That's a goal that most rulers should probably want, is just to get rid of the council. It's a lot easier not to deal with them than it is to deal with them. There are detriments to doing this. I believe sometimes it might be your domain that goes down, it might be your vassal limit that goes down. A few of them will tell you, like, there are benefits to having the council in charge here. Your vassal limit is up. The more laws that you have in favor of your council, it gives you more limit to your vassal, so the bigger your realm can potentially be. But it's kind of annoying. Some of them you might not mind, though, like... Personally, I probably wouldn't mind Banishment being in favor of the council. I could probably stand to have that switched over to council favor, because I so rarely banish people that it does not really matter if they have to vote in favor of it. Because whether someone is in the dungeon rotting for the rest of their life or banished, they're a non-issue either way. But Banishment gives me the chance to seize their funds. That's the only difference it is, so it's a slight boon to me. The Holy Roman Emperor, the Holy Roman Empire, the guy we're under, we can actually check the law of that here, but I'm not going to go into that. You can... empires get a lot more inheritance laws and realms and stuff like that. We'll address those as we see them if we ever get to that level. Investiture is papal right now, and controlled realm inheritance is illegal, or is free. Vassal war declaration is allowed. That's amazing for us. I really should go through this now that I'm thinking about it. Yeah, hell, I'll do it. I'll do it now. Investiture. Bishops within the kingdom can be appointed by their secular lieges, and will be more loyal to their liege. The Pope will not be pleased. This means that the kingdom, say if I was Montferrat and I was an empire, I would have direct control over appointing my own bishops to the churches that I wanted. It wouldn't be the Pope deciding who was going to be in control of the bishoprics. Pope doesn't like it. Papal investiture is the opposite. It means the Pope has control of who the bishops are, but it creates a 50% piety discount whenever requesting special papal actions like divorce and excommunication. I've already talked about excommunication. They never agree to it. So that is a completely pointless... it'd be pointless to have papal investiture, basically, unless you're worried about pleasing the Pope. Unless you care about getting divorced, potentially. They might approve that if she's a eunuch or something. If she's too old, it might happen. Controlled realm inheritance. What this means is, you remember the thing where I said I could potentially become the Holy Roman Emperor if I played my cards right and inherited. Let's say I tried to do that, but I was the King of Poland. I'm outside of the Empire, and I somehow managed to get my son married to his hypothetical, or my daughter married to his hypothetical son in a matrilineal marriage. They had kids, and the dynasty would shift over to me. That means I would gain control of the Holy Roman Empire. That would be impossible if controlled realm inheritance was set to illegal. That would mean that the title could no longer pass outside the realm. So even if it was a smaller title, like the Duchy of Meissen, for instance, if I did that to Meissen instead, Meissen might become part of Poland and fall out of the Holy Roman Empire. That would be impossible if this was set to illegal. Right now it's set to free. That means we can have titles pass outside the realm. It's bad when you're in control of the country. If I was in control of the HRE, I would not want that to happen. I would try and change that to illegal. I don't want to lose power to some other person by sneaking in and trying to take it out from under me. It's a bad idea. Vassal war declaration. Currently within the Holy Roman Empire, for everyone who is inside of it, Everyone is allowed to fight with everybody else. We're allowed to have internal wars and all of that jazz. If I want, and we're allowed to have internal wars and external wars. So if I want to declare war on France privately, I could. If I wanted to, the Holy Roman Emperor wouldn't back me up if I declared war on France privately, though. If France attacked me, though, the Holy Roman Empire would defend me. Since it's allowed, since I'm allowed to declare war on Seleucia, which is great, we want this. When you're a vassal under an empire, when you're not in control of the empire, you want it to be set to allowed. Because if it's set to external only, that means the only avenue of an expansion for me would become Genoa, and it would become France, or somebody else, and that's bad, because you don't want to be the only one fighting against a very big nation like that. I want to be able to attack people from within without being bothered, and become bigger on my own, and swell until I'm big enough to take over. If it was set to external, that would mean I'd be only allowed to attack people outside. And if, for some reason, as awful as this would be, if I set it to, if the Holy Roman Emperor decided to set it to illegal, completely illegal for anyone who's under him to declare private wars, I would not be able to expand at all. I wouldn't be able to attack anyone next to me, anyone outside my realm, nobody. I wouldn't be able to expand the border. The only way I'd ever want to switch it to that is if I was in charge, and I wanted to make sure I controlled the way I expanded myself, and I didn't want people expanding off in avenues that I didn't want. I didn't want Hungary under my control, or Croatia. There's sometimes you want de jure borders, and you want everything to be clean looking. You want to have what belongs to you and nothing else. That's when you would switch it to illegal. Centralization. This is what you would have access to if you were a duke. Centralization governs the amount of vassals you're allowed to have, which isn't shown here because we're only a count, but eventually there'll be another box here that'll show vassals somewhere. And the higher the centralization we go, that means the more power is centralized. Our domain size will go up if we're higher centralized. If we go to max centralization, we'll be able to hold more counties personally, but we'll be able to have far fewer vassals. So if I was the Holy Roman Emperor and I had max centralization, I might not be able to have all these vassals. I might not be able to have Florence or Lombardy or me, under me, all these counts, without taking a huge penalty. But since he's on minimum, he's allowed to have so many vassals, he can expand in any direction as long as he's content to not have as much land personally. He can only have a certain amount of land personally. So it's when you're on minimum centralization, you get more, you get to hold less land personally, but you get to have more vassals. So they do your fighting for you. But if you're on high centralization, you hold less land. You hold more land personally. You rely on your own troops more. You're talking about like a strong centralized army, a national army. You're moving towards a nation state when you're doing that. Viceroyalty. This is an interesting little mechanic that came about 2 patches ago. When this is enabled, it takes a very high legalism to do this. You are allowed to give out titles, so the Holy Roman Empire might hand out a title, the Duchy of Swabia, to one guy. But upon that guy's death, it doesn't keep passing down in his family line. It goes back to the crown. So upon this guy's death, this would default back to Heinrich IV, and he would become the Duke of Ulm temporarily, and then he could give it out to somebody else. That's really cool. I would like to have that law if I ever became the Holy Roman Emperor. But it is hard to get there. So, and of course it'll tell you. So, this allows you to pass out duchies. This allows you to pass out kingdom viceroyalties, and this allows you to pass out duchies. So, the bigger one comes first, ironically, because it's more risky to hand out a big kingdom, but to pass out duchies that you want to default back to you would be less risk. So it's further up on the laws that you would have to pass. It's more difficult to pass that law. Requires more administration, basically. Revoke titles. He is not allowed to revoke titles under any circumstances. That's one of the ones that we have available to us. We're not allowed either. We can change ours, and he could probably change his. Same deal for him anyway. It's the same principle. And again, administration is the same for him. He's still on feudal. Going up is better for later on in the game. You're moving towards a nation state when you go further up, and imperial is would be really good for really good for the that enables viceroyalties. In fact, duchy viceroyalties allows additional succession laws. Vassals who refuse the liege interference in wars are seen as traitors, so you're required to go to war with your liege. Obligations, he has them all set to default. It's just the taxation and the levy thing again. And his laws are the same as ours, potentially. His council is empowered. Most of the HRE's laws right now are actually in favor of the council. It takes approval, consent of the governed for him to get anything done. The only thing he's allowed... Actually, he has nothing. Nothing is in favor of the ruler for him. It's all limited. It's all... Actually, it's limited council authority. The ruler has full authority over choice of succession law and can fire all council members at will. But if this was different, the council reaches its peak when the ruler is unable to fire council members at will and unable to completely control the succession of the realm. This would mean, like, you'd be moving towards a constitutional monarchy at this point. You'd be drawing up the constitution of laws and what you can and can't do as a leader. Divine right of kings would be non-existent, and the council would have the real power. It'd be sort of like a parliament system. Anyway, that's law taken care of. Wow, that took a long time. Technology, very briefly. Military advances. Light infantry buffs our light infantry ability. Each of the army. When I raise the army here, it consists of many different things. It consists of light infantry, pikemen, archers, heavy infantry, and light cavalry, and potentially heavy cavalry and horse archers as well. So we don't have any of those right now currently. I'll just disband. Going back to the technology, so light infantry buffs our attack and defense on light infantry and archers. Heavy infantry is the same for heavy infantry and pikemen. Cavalry is for all types of cavalry, heavy cavalry, light cavalry, elephants, camels if you have them, war elephants, all that sort of stuff, horse archers. Siege equipment increases the siege speed whenever we're sieging down a territory to capture it in a war. The more the merrier. Better siege defense for our castles. It'll be harder to siege if we have that. Shipbuilding, if we had a coast, we would have more ships available to us to raise up. Also, a lot of these unlock buildings. Shipbuilding unlocks the city shipyard building, the temple shipyard 3, castle shipyard, shipbuilder, depending on what you are and whether you're building in a city, a church, or a castle, or a merchant republic. Military organization, the morale of armies goes up, so all of these gain more hit points, essentially, and the global supply limit goes up for everyone. It means that everyone has an easier time marching around the world because they won't suffer as much attrition. And it also gives you 450% retinue cap, which means we'll have more ability to hire standing armies and more of them at a time if we wanted to. If we had the money to pay for them, we could get 2 units or 3 units or 4 units, whatever, and mix them up. The more the better. For technology in military, I tend to lean towards siege equipment, military organization, and whatever your primary number of troops are. If you look at your troops when you raise them up in your territory, or if you go to the military tab specifically, and raise both of your troops up here, look at the numbers here. You want to take the technology that benefits the most of your troops. So, majority of our troops consist of heavy infantry. That is the biggest number. So if we chose a technology, if we had military points to spend, I'd want to invest in heavy infantry probably. Followed closely by cav and light infantry and so forth. So you find the one that that benefits you the most, and then you take that one, siege equipment and military organization. Those are all very good. Sometimes shipbuilding if you're coastal. But these three, one of these three, and then this and this for sure. Economy technology. Castle infrastructure. This increases the taxes that we get from vassals that are baronies. We don't have a barony underneath of us, but this is the barony of Moncalvo. We just happen to own it. It's the capital of Montferrat, the county. If we had another barony, another castle here, it might be ruled by somebody else. That would increase the amount of taxes that we get from him. It also unlocks buildings that you can build in your castles. Town infrastructure, it's the same, except it's cities, so more city tax would be good. Higher percentage of city tax. Right now we get 18.7, then we would get 25.0 if we went up another level. Unlocks more buildings in the city, city guard, university, militia training ground. Church infrastructure, same thing, temple tax, unlocks more buildings. Improvised keeps, it improves our barony, our own personal holdings, I think, with the possibility of keeps and castle walls and city walls and church walls. All of those tend to be tax modifying things, so keeps is a good one to get up. The walls especially are all have to do with taxes. You want to be able to reap the most tax you can out of your own provinces as well. Trade practices. This is not very important for feudal characters. This is for merchant republics, and increases the trade value in trade nodes. If I switch very quickly, I'll switch to the trade zone map mode. So you can see Venice owns all of this, Pisa owns here, Genoa owns this, Bisbee owns that, and there's a few merchant republics down here in Arabia. Don't know what these are called. This is the Silk Road, actually, so that also improves it. If you were a feudal lord around this area, you'd get a lot of benefits out of that if you had trade practices, but since that is not the case, it's not important for us, don't worry about that. Construction, it cheapens the cost, it cheapens the build time, and unlocks certain other buildings as well. Cultural advances, noble customs. Increases the opinion of feudal vassals, basically. It makes transitioning from new rulers much easier when you become another character. Once your character dies and you become your son or your daughter, it'll make people like you more quickly. It just applies. People like you more if they're nobles, if they're barons. Popular customs, same deal for mayors. Religious customs, same thing for bishops and the Pope. Potentially anybody, just anybody who's a city or feudal or religious. It's all just opinion. Majesty, this one is important. It's probably the most important of the cultural advances, because Majesty affects monthly piety gain and monthly prestige gain. The higher the better, because both of those things are currencies technically. You want to have as much as that, and unlocks short reign years. That means that it's quicker to get rid of the short reign penalty once you die and become a new character. So there'll be more, you'll start ticking towards long reign faster, which means opinion will go up quicker and so forth. Legalism unlocks different laws, basically. Unlocks tax laws. It's good to have. It's not as important as it used to be. I remember when it used to be tied to domain size. The more legalism you had, the more domain you could have, but it's not tied to that anymore. It's changed. The military tab. We have the retinues, which again are the standing armies. You can buy these if you have enough money and you have the retinue cap for it, the amount of retinue you can have, and these will always be there. They'll always be there defending your realm. That's a professional army. That's when you're moving towards a centralized government, more of a city, more of a country in the modern sense. Here you have army levies. This tells you how many personally I can raise from my domain. Tells me how many are possible right now and how many I could potentially have once I replenish the levy. So I can click this button and it shows me that's how many I have. I go back to the military tab. From vassals is also available, so I can just raise my vassals levy, which are the bishopric of Casale and the city of Asti. They have a total, they're giving me a total of 47 men. This is why I don't care about their opinions. That could be potentially much higher if we had counts under us, or if we were a duke, or if we were a king, we'd get all the dukes and the counts under us, giving us men from them. Then we have hired men. That would tell us our mercenary count, basically. And of course, we have fleet levies. If we had coastal provinces, we would have harbors and shipyards, and they would give us ships. We'd have ships from our own land, ships from our vassals, and hired ships. We don't have any coastal land, so we can't hire boats, obviously. Mercenary companies. If you have enough gold in the game and you're about to lose a war, hire some mercenaries. You can see what they cost up front here, 450 ducats for an army of 4,544 men. Most of these are heavy infantry, so they're very expensive, and a monthly cost of 32.71. Be careful when you hire mercenaries. Even if you have the 450 gold up front, if you don't have money to support them, 32 ducats a month, and you go over a month and they don't get paid, they could potentially rebel against you, and they could take your land from you as payment. Mercenaries are risky. You want to be careful with those. Only use them in emergencies. Save up a war chest, and if you buy them, make sure you bleed them right away and sacrifice them as soon as possible in achieving your goals. There are a lot of mercenary companies. You can actually begin and start your own mercenary company. I don't quite remember how to do that yet. I'm sure we'll get to it eventually, and will be an option to us at some point, but they have varying qualities of men. Some of them have heavy infantry, some of them are more leaning towards light infantry or cavalry. You can even hire ships. Specific mercenary companies that have 40 ships as well as troops. If you wanted to go off to the Holy Land, you didn't have any ships, you can hire them. Or you could just hire ship retinues here, which are purely ships, nothing else. As you go on, you'll see a lot of pagans start to make more and more mercenary companies, and usually they're really cheap, so you might be able to afford some of the cheaper ones if they're smaller. It takes a long time to build up a respectable one, like the White Company here. The White Company were actually mercenaries from history, and they were real. I think they were from Italy or something like that. The Company of St. George, the Great Company, all of these are actual ones. That's why they have such high numbers. Company of the Star. Holy Orders. At a certain point in the game, usually at about the time of the Crusades, Holy Orders will begin to form. You'll see the Knights Templar spring up here. You'll see the Knights Hospitaller, the Teutonic Knights, the Livonian Order, the Knights of Calatrava. You can hire Holy Orders when you are in a holy war. When you're declaring an offensive holy war, you have to pay a piety cost instead of gold, but you also have to pay gold monthly. But it is an upfront piety cost, I believe, if you're in an offensive holy war. If you're in a defensive holy order, I believe they're free. I'm not entirely sure about that, but they'll defend you, I think, just at the cost of piety. Allies in wars, it will list it'll list how many allies you have, if you have any allies, and you can assign them orders here. You could say, you could flag, this is the this right here beside this shield. This is a new feature in the game as well that was added in Monks and Mystics. And tell, this is the goal that I want you guys to achieve. Go siege this down, and they'll go and do that for you, which is great. Before, it was so hard to get it was so hard to get allies to do anything, and allies were so useless before. There might actually be use to them now. We're gonna have to see. That takes care of the military tab. We have another button here that's call all tribal vassals to war. The way tribal vassals work is switch over to the governments tab. If I had tribal vassals, they have the option to decline my call to arms. I could call them up, and they would receive a letter, and they would say, of course I'll join your war, or no, I'm not going to join your war, or whatever. But they'd have the option to either yay or nay us. We call them up. We don't have any tribal vassals, you don't have to worry about that. Alright, next tab, Intrigue. This is a tab you're going to be flipping to quite a lot. Of the tabs, the most important ones you'll probably be going back and forth from are the counselors, the military, the intrigue tab. Those ones are the most important. Intrigue is the tab where all of your events that you can possibly do are. You can see here we can recruit a court physician if we needed one. We already have a court physician, so we don't need to do that now. But if we didn't have one, we could pay some money and start looking for one. And we might find one and we could hire him. Tell you the conditions for meeting this, or the conditions for achieving this. And we already have a court physician, so we don't need to do that. And we can mark decisions as important, and you might want to choose which ones are important for yourself, but the one that I've marked as important are this one, because whenever we need a court physician, I'd like to know about it. So if our court physician dies, I'd like an alert for it to pop down at the top of the screen, so that will give me an alert for it to get a new one. Go on a grand hunt. This happens every autumn. If you have the hunting focus, you can have the ability from, I think, September to November to go on a grand hunt, which means I pay some money, I get to go and gain some extra monthly prestige, I get different events that could potentially buff my stats and traits and things like that. It's just a nice bit of flavor and roleplay if you're a hunter. Summer Fair, if it's summer, I can hold one of these, and I have it set to notify me whenever these become available to do. Pay 25 gold, gain some monthly prestige. This gives me an opinion buff from all of my vassals and things like that, because I'm spending money to have like a little tournament type deal, and it gives me events and so forth as well. You might get people coming to your court, you might get people leaving, you might get different traits, and lots of different things could happen. Hold a feast, same deal, except it occurs in the winter, in December. In November to January, I think it is, or something like that. Let's see. Month is at least November. You have to pay gold, and you get options to spend more and more gold to make a better and better feast, and that gives prestige bonuses and possibly traits and things like that in the month of December. It's just another thing for you to do. We can promote commanders if we lack people with military experience, which honestly we do right now. If we take a look at minor titles and look at our commanders, we have 2 of them, and both of them are pretty awful. We could pay some money to get some better guys, potentially. 25 prestige and 8.48 gold to get a few different guys, and it tells you what his name is. And there's no guarantee that he'll be better, but he might be. He'll probably be. It's good to do that when you know you're going into battle and you need some better people to be in charge of your army. Invite a holy man to court. That's the same deal. That costs piety. And that would be as if you were in need of a court chaplain. It was also a good way to kind of exploit positions for counselors as well back in the day, because sometimes you'd get a court chaplain that sucked at learning. He had a horrible learning skill, but sometimes they would have good stewardship skills. Sometimes they would have good martial skills. Sometimes they'd have good diplomacy skill or intrigue or whatever. So it was good to spend piety. That would be a way. That'd be something piety was actually useful for, to get more councils, more potential people who could be on your council that could do the job better. It might still work that way, but they tend to heavily lean towards learning more than anything else. So you need a replacement for your court chaplain. That's how you do it. Nobles, on the other hand, are inclined for stewardship positions and diplomacy positions. So that's what if you wanted to replace this guy, or this guy, the spy mastery type, you can do that. Nobles could be any one of those. You'd invite them to your court by paying money. Present a debutante. If you need women to come to your court, if you need somebody to marry somebody to, you can pay 6.73 gold to have a random woman appear in your court. Pay money to get a woman. Yes, sounds exactly as bad as it should, but I don't see the point in that, because we have something called the character finder for a reason, and you just send out random marriage proposals, because that's pretty much the only reason you'd want a woman, unless you had the laws that allowed you to have women on the council, which would require you to have the cognatic laws, and certain cultures only, I believe, that let you have women in positions of governance on councils. Borrow 300 ducats from the Jewish merchants. You can do this, and the church will hate you if you're Catholic, because they don't like money lending. The church does not like money lending. You borrow 300 ducats, 300 gold right to your treasury, and you owe the Jews money. And you can choose to pay that back with a bit of interest later on down the line. Usually it goes from 300 to 350, if I'm not mistaken. If you don't want to pay the Jews back, you can expel the Jewry. You can just remove the undesirables. All the Jews will be expelled from the realm. Loans you have taken from Jewish moneylenders are forfeit and will not need to be repaid, but Jews will not return for many years. You would think, that's amazing. Let me just take their money and get rid of them. Jews are directly, weirdly, to prevent you from doing this, I guess they extrapolated, having Jews in your realm is a good thing because they improve the technology spread in your realm. So you're going to fall behind in tech if you get rid of the Jews. So you'd only want to do that in case of an emergency. Before, back in the day, you'd actually get to you'd seize even more money, and you still seize more money, in fact. So you'd take their assets basically before you left. So you'd kick them out of your realm, banish everybody who's Jewish in your realm, and rob them of all their franchise. Just commit one of the oldest sins in the newest ways. It's pretty awful, but it's good if you're in trouble. Do it if you need to, but do it sparingly. Buy an indulgence for our sins. This is basically a way to convert money into piety, and I never use it because I don't think money is worth the trade for piety in general. It's if you're excommunicated and want to be forgiven by the Pope, that might be something you could do, is buy indulgence for your sins and then ask the Pope to remove the excommunication. So that could be worth doing. I've never been excommunicated, I don't think. Might have been once, the entire time I've played. Ask the liege for a title. I can only do this once every 2 years. I could ask Kaiser Heinrich IV right now to give me something else. He could potentially create the Duchy of Susa for me and give me the Duke title. But that'll depend on whether he likes me, and he doesn't like me very much because I'm a foreigner, and the only thing that's really in my favor is state diplomacy, and he'd probably just say no if I asked him. You want to do that when you know your liege likes you, or when you deserve a title. And he also dislikes us for asking. Expel the Jews, we already went over that. Shut the gates. Shut the gates is one of those things, whenever a plague rolls through the area, we have the ability to close the gates to gain disease resistance, and we'll talk about disease resistance in a second. But yeah, the decision is important, but I've turned it off in the meantime because it tends to show up too much, and I try to avoid it because it gives all kinds of malices to your province. I think prosperity goes down. I think you can start starving your populace, and potentially you can turn into cannibals and things like that if it gets really, really bad. But that's something you want to do when a plague rolls through. When the Black Death rolls through, we'll probably be shutting the gates. And then we have the ability to offer a 200 ducat donation to our liege. As your liege is building a war chest, you can seize the opportunity to send a generous donation. By sending 200 at this precarious time, you might gain the favor of your liege. So, yeah, his opinion of us will probably go up. Whatever. Those are decisions. Those are all the events you can possibly take. More will show up during the year, and some new ones might pop up every now and then. Keep an eye on it. Switch back and forth between this tab and the Counselors tab often, as well as laws, to see if you can change any laws. You want to be swapping between those pretty regular. Down here we have plots, and we have lots of plots that we could potentially do. We can kill all of these people. Plot to kill all these people for reasons unknown. I'm not sure why. Salerno is probably because we're of the same dynasty, and if we plot to kill these kids, if we kill all of them, we could inherit Salerno and it would become part of our realm. We're not going to do that because I'm playing a pious character. Will be playing a pious character if I ever get through explaining the game. I kill Princess Adelaide, and, you know, try and dick with the Holy Roman Emperor. We could try and kill the Princess of Norway for reasons unknown. Kill this guy, I have no idea. A lot of these plots will be situational, and usually they'll be in your benefit in some way, but it's your task to find out why it's in your benefit. Known plots. You can also plot to do things on your own as well. We'll get to that. Known plots. This is if our spy master manages to uncover anything while scheming. When we assign him to scheme in the capital, if he finds anybody doing anything nefarious, we could ask them to auto stop, or we could prison from this screen. We could politely ask them to stop doing it. We could do a lot of different things there. It's good to keep an eye on this tab, obviously, the known plots tab. Keep an eye on it. Make sure nothing nefarious is going on. Prisoners! Anytime you gain prisoners, they will show up here, and they've added a much-needed filter so you can do a mass execution or a mass ransom or a mass release of everybody you don't want in the prison anymore, or anybody who's worth money, anybody who's causing trouble. You can set them. You can set the filters by gender and by adult and by foreigner and ruler and whatever you want. Ransomable, yes. Only show ransomable characters. Threats. Certain times in the game, an event will pop up where somebody will amass an invasion against you. Sometimes it'll be a family member that you've banished. They might come back with an army and try and take everything from you, and will show you a percentile and tell you how long it's going to take for them to amass the army, so you can be ready to beat it. Or you can try and assassinate them or something like that to stop them from doing that. Alright, so that is the Intrigue tab, more or less. Factions. Very quickly, we already went over that. We can start factions from here, factions in the Holy Roman Empire. If there's any other factions in the HRE, they'll show up here. We can join them, we can start our own. We can see the factions in our own county in Montferrat. There are none currently. Our vassals could potentially join those. Keep an eye on this tab as well, make sure that none of them are getting too high. When a faction is strong enough, it will fire and it will send you an ultimatum, and it will say, either you do this, or we will fight you. We will rebel against you. We will try and destroy everything you've created. The threshold for that is 100%. Anything over 100% means that that is going to happen. They will push the button eventually. Always make sure, if you see people plotting against you, if people are factioning, make sure it doesn't go above 100. If you see it going anywhere near 100, if it hits 80 or something like that, pay super close attention. Send your diplomat to improve relations with the guy who is worth the most percentile in that batch. It'll arrange them like it did in the where the hell was that? It'll arrange it like they did it in the realm tree. It'll tell you in a percentile by how much this person is worth in the faction. Send your diplomat, find this character, go to the Duchess, go to her character page, and then hit find out where she currently is. Do that. She is probably, yeah, she's reigning in Arezzo, Florence right now, so she is here. You would send your diplomat to improve diplomatic relations there, and she would possibly leave the faction. You should also send your spy master to scheme or build a spy network, and that'll discourage anyone from joining her faction that would join it. To say if it was her that was plotting against you and you were above her in rank. That takes care of factions. Keep an eye on it. Right here we have the religion tab. This is one that I rarely ever use. It tells us our moral authority of the Catholic religion. That affects things. That is basically saying how strong our religion is. It's affected by things, how organized it is, whether we have all of our holy sites. We're actually missing one of our holy sites right now, which is Jerusalem. We do not currently own Jerusalem. So we have a minus 10% or 0% malice, or we would have 10% if we own that. Every other holy site that the Roman Catholics own is under our control. We own Canterbury, which is in England. We own Santiago, which is in Spain. Roma is Rome, which is in Italy. And Cologne is in Germany. So we own all those. Those are all giving us a bonus to our moral authority. Pope Alexander controls a holy site. Since the Pope actually owns Rome, that's another bonus to our moral authority. And the diplomacy of the Pope increases the moral authority higher, so since he's well-liked, he's increasing the power of our faith. Piety of the Pope is also improving it a little bit. Moral authority is good because it affects the ability for us to spread our religion to other people faster, and for other counties that we take that are a different religion to convert faster. The higher the moral authority, the easier it'll be for us to convert a county. As you can see here, Rama is being converted from Orthodox to Catholic. Since our moral authority is very high as a Catholic, it's going to be fairly easy to convert this from Orthodox to Catholic. It's harder to convert from other religions that aren't your base religion. Since Orthodox is Orthodox Christianity, it's more easy to convert it to Catholicism than it would be to convert a Muslim county to Catholicism, for instance. It just depends on the religion, and it depends on whether it's a Reformed religion. Sunni is a Reformed religion, Catholicism is Reformed, Orthodox is Reformed. That affects it. Reformed religions are harder to convert, but things that are unreformed, like pagans, like the Slavics, like the Germanics, they're harder. They're easier to convert because they are not a reformed religion. They're not organized in the same way. There's also Jews over here, Jewish characters. There's another Jewish character here. Own things. So that's moral authority. We have the religious head here, and then we have something that I don't understand why they bothered to put this in, because nobody ever fucking uses it. I've never seen anyone in any campaign use this other than when it came out way back in the day. This is the College of Cardinals, and I have no idea how it works. Still to this day, I haven't bothered with it. I don't care. This is essentially what you would do if you wanted to put your pope, if you wanted to have one of your bishops in your realm become the pope, or become a cardinal. You could, the preferatus means, this is the Pope currently, Pope Alexander II. The person who is scheduled to become the next Pope is a bishop from Pisa. So he's from here. He's going to become the next one, and I guess the rest of the cardinals are all voting, or tending to be voting for him. And he probably has the combination of the best piety and whatever the hell else criteria goes into this, but what we'd be trying to do first is trying to get one of our bishops to become a cardinal. Our best candidate is this guy, who's the Bishop of Casale, and the expected next cardinal to replace the guy who becomes pope is this guy, who is somebody in the HRE. He's a prince bishop, and he has almost double the cardinal appointment score that we have. And the way we get more cardinal appointment score, I think, is he has to improve his piety, his traits have to be better, we have to choose somebody better, or find a better guy, and then fund his campaign with ducats, and I just cannot be bothered. It costs too much money, it's too much micro, I can't, it doesn't, not enough stuff to worry about. Under vassal bishops, again, we have the option to appoint successors. We could potentially make the bishops who we'd want to become the next bishop, so the next bishop in our realm we could choose, but that would piss off the Pope. I prefer just not to fuck with it. Just let the Pope choose who he wants. It doesn't matter to me. Again, it's not worth microing. It's just not. It's too much effort. Last page. This is it. Societies. The main focus of this new DLC. I'm going to close this now. I don't need this open. Societies are the monk orders and the various things that we talked about briefly. I think we did anyway. I'm not certain about it, but these are monastic orders. If we expand this tab, it shows the ones we have the options to pick. We have the Benedictine Order, we have the Dominican Order, we have the Hermetic Society, and the Lucifer Zone. All of these have different benefits and quests that we work towards. They'll give us appointments and jobs and different things that we can do to increase our rank within them. This is the leader, the current leader of the order, and it'll tell you where he is if you right-clicked on him. We could potentially become a member, and then we could start working towards all these benefits. First, we'd be a donatus, which I'd assume would mean donator, just a basic, you know, somebody who favors the order, someone who isn't necessarily affiliated, but who's trying to get in on the in with them. An oblatus, we have the power to take a vow of celibacy. Oh boy, that's what I want to do as a feudal vassal who needs to sire children. I want to become celibate. No, but if we want to become more powerful, we have to do that to become more powerful, and we gain more piety by doing that anyway. It might be something you'd want to do at an old age. If you got nothing better to do, you might as well gain some piety from it. We also have the power to renounce the vow of celibacy. Become a comitius as the next rank. Once we gain enough influence in this faction, we can rank up again. And we can invite a holy ascetic, which is like another free counselor. He's way better than normal ones. They usually make great doctors and great counselors in general. So good to spread the faith and good to have more holy men in the thing for free. And then we could be the conversus, become the actual head of the order, which means we have the power of Benedictine diligence. I have no idea what that does. Each of these have different effects, I'm sure. If we... Oddly, the Dominicans don't have any power as a conversus. I have no idea why that is. Oh, that's gonna suck. Unless we don't know what it is yet, maybe. And all of these give initiate. We have the ability to perform scrying on your character's portrait in order to turn to the mystical art of divination and attempt to foretell the future. We can brew potions, make a horoscope. I don't know what that does. I haven't ever played around with this, so I'm not going to attempt a lecture. Bunch of things you can do if you're a Satan worshipper. Not going to get involved in that. And that's pretty much it. Tells you what they are, and it'll give you your active missions here once you become a member. If you become a member, you don't have to be. Holy hell. Is there anything left? Ran through the money, we ran through the prestige, we ran through the piety, we ran through the domain size. I don't know what this is for the life of me. I think it's vassals, current vassals, and we have our score up here, which doesn't really matter all that much. The date, go faster, slower on the time, high priority messages, low priority messages. This thing will probably be unlocked for you, and you'll probably want to lock it always to be on, and this tells you just, it's a quick way to snap to your place. It tells you your taxes, your fort level, and the amount of men you can draw from it, and what the barony itself is called. It's good to have that open. Various map modes. We'll talk more about this when we actually go to war, but this one here is terrain. It tells you about every place you could possibly go. You know, if I hover over Montferrat, the terrain is plains. We are currently experiencing a severe winter. The climate is severe winter, but currently our winter is normal. So we're getting lucky for this year. Realms, again, we'll show you the actual realms of your top liege, so the Holy Roman Empire, the France and whatnot. Diplomatic relations will show you who you're friendly with. Currently the only diplomatic relations we have are with Salerno and the Holy Roman Emperor. They're the only ones with opinions of us. Religions, again, the religion map mode, already went over that. Cultures, again, this is what you'd worry about if you want to assign vassals, again, or get wives, because, again, you want people to be of your same culture, or at least in your same culture group, when you assign them to rule territory in your realm. It's better that way because you won't suffer an opinion malice, and it'll be easier to please the people who are under you. Economy tells you how much everybody's earning. Not super important, but it might be if you plan on expanding in certain directions. You might want to take a look at this and consider who has the most money and where you'd like to get the claim on if your goal is money. You can see a lot of places are doing very bad in Russia and out in the desert in Africa. Africa's dirt poor as usual. De jure territories, de jure duchies. This shows you what the duchies should look like and what by law they should have in them. That is not necessarily what they have in them, though. You see Susa is here. It's the duchy I've been talking about as hypothetically that we might want to form someday. Us, Piedmont, and Saluzzo are all part of it. And so forth, all the duchies all over the place. De jure kingdoms, same deal, except it's for kingdoms what the kingdoms should consist of if they exist, but not all of them exist. And then empires. And we have revolt risk, a map mode you'll probably never use. Dynasties, a map mode you'll probably never use. Opinions, a map mode you'll probably never use. And I'm getting PM'd. I should have turned that off before. Anyway, direct vassals, this one's useful. That's the one we're going to be playing under as a vassal most of the time, so we can see our own extent of our territory. It's easier than being in independent realms. If you were the top level liege, you'd switch to independent realm though, as your primary map mode. Trade zones, if you're a republic, you'd worry about that. Governments, Again, not one you're going to be, it's more of a curiosity just to see what is what, and maybe if you were expanding out in this direction, you need to look at it every now and then, not going to be one you're going to use. Defensive pacts might be useful situationally. Once you go to war a lot, you need to see whether it's going to piss off a bunch of people. There's no defensive pact against the HRE right now because it's the start of the game. And disease spread. If there's an epidemic that turns up in India and starts migrating over here, we'll get to see its path and where it's going. Whether it destroys things or not. Anyway, I think we are way the hell over time. I thank you so much for watching this episode of Rag Plays Crusader Kings II, Monks and Mystics as the Penitenziagite campaign as Montferrat. Gameplay next time, I promise. I swear. I hope. Might take a look at the. Oh my God, I can't even believe I just hyped you up and now I'm going to tear you down. We might look at buildings next time, just very, very briefly. But gameplay, I promise, next time. See you then.